Hello and welcome back to Irish Racing and Jump to It, where this weekend we're going to preview 8 feature races, action from the Curragh, from Newmarket and Newcastle as well, presenting our best bets from our expert panel of guests. Now joining me as ever is Vincent, Finegan and Ed Quigley. Now unfortunately Stephen Harris can't make it, but Ed, I want to start with you and just give you a thanks for being in the saddle during Royal Ascot. Thanks for covering me. How was your week? Oh, and how was the week for you?
Yeah, hi Joe. No worries at all. No, it was great fun actually. A brilliant 5 days of racing. I think it was fair to say. Yeah, I know Stephen. He likes a grumble, so he was a bit unhappy with a few of the rides and a bit of the draw bias. And now he's stuck in traffic on the M25, so things just go from bad to worse for Stephen. But no, generally speaking, it was a really good week. Really exciting stuff. Personal highlights. I thought Spiral was devastating. I thought the ride on Rohan for Ryan Moore was wonderful. And earlier in the week, obviously, the Australian Sprint Nature Strip. I mean, you've got to go back a while. You saw a Grade 1 sprint kind of won in that manner over the minimum trip. So, yeah, there really were some scintillating performances, and it was thoroughly enjoyable.
And Vincent, we saw you discuss Royal Ascot as well with in our new show on Irish Racing with Emma Nagle and Johnny Ward. If you haven't checked that out, go ahead and go and view that. But Vincent, I want to get your view quickly on Royal Ascot and also looking ahead to the Curragh. I mean, what can they do to kind of build up a bit more excitement about the Irish Derby meeting?
Yeah, I think that's a definite conundrum for them at this stage. The Irish Derby is flagging a bit on the international stage, certainly. Like Ascot was amazing. What a week. From the international side of it alone was incredible to see horses from basically all over the world running, competing, winning there, including 8 winners from Ireland, which was great. Could have even had a couple more with a bit of luck. Terrific meeting. It's getting bigger every year. Everyone's going to try and emulate what Ascot does, but how do you do that? One of the things I wrote a blog earlier in the week around this, that if you look at Ascot with the royal aspect to it and everyone getting dressed up and all that type of thing, there's it's difficult to see how that works in this day and age, because you would think that there's an element, or certainly is an element of elitism to it. So why does it work? And yet the very same thing happens at the Curragh. There's an element of elitism around an Irish Derby where people get dressed up as well and everything else, but it doesn't work in Ireland. Maybe it's a colloquial thing. Irish just don't want to see other Irish getting dressed up. I don't know, but yet there's a lot of Irish go to Royal Ascot and have a wonderful time. So it's very difficult to see why one works and the other doesn't. But the Irish Derby, going back 20 years ago, you'd have 25,000 plus people every single year at it, packed out, huge social event in Ireland. It's on the wane, probably for the last 10, 15 years, certainly. The quality of horse hasn't been there. We've seen very few Epsom Derby winners, certainly very few English-trained Epsom Derby winners. I think you have to go back to 2004. Northlight is the last English-trained Derby winner that ran in the Irish Derby and got beaten that year by Grace Swallow. We haven't had another one since. There's been 7 more English-trained Derby winners and none of them have come over to Ireland, which is a bit disappointing. We also no longer see the French Derby winner coming because obviously the French Derby has changed the trip to 1.25 miles. There's some rumblings around Ireland at the moment that they need to do something with the Irish race to see maybe go that 1.25 mile route. I'm not sure that's a solution, personally. Hard to know what to make of it. We've actually got a very good race, which we'll discuss now in a few minutes. But this year, it's turned into a good race by default, I think. But it's a very nice race. Whether it's a pure classic in the highest levels of that, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, there's a lot to be done in Ireland, certainly with the Curragh as well. It really needs to get itself back on track at some point.
Well, of course, I mean, hopefully the interest will build up after we've given the people some winners here on Jump to It. So now we're going to crack on and go into our feature races of the weekend. Right, so the first race we are going to look at is the 305 at the Curragh. Now, a little bit of a new format here on Jump to It. I'm actually going to use the irishracing.com website to show you the card, go through a little bit of the angles, show you some of the features as well on the site so you can get a little bit more data and a little bit more information going into the race. So the first one is the Gain Railway Stakes that we want to look at. Now here, Blackbeard is the favourite. I feel like there is some interesting ones to look at as well. But Vincent, you had your eye on Age of Kings as a potential upset here for Blackbeard.
Yeah, I think it has a chance. I think this is wide open. The two of them ran in the same race in the Coventry Stakes in Royal Ascot. Blackbeard finished fourth and Age of Kings was seventh. Age of Kings now has a tongue strap on. There was very little between them. Age of Kings was well back that day as well. So you'll see on the site there, you can see the TS1 against Age of Kings, which shows it's a tongue strap for the first time. The other thing here is that there's another horse that ran in Ascot here, Crispy Cat. It was very unlucky. Hampered by the Riddler in the Norfolk Stakes. That was over 5 furlongs. I'd worry about that horse over 6. I thought Crispy Cat was all speed on the first 3 runs. I actually thought that Sylvester de Souza rode it in Ascot. I was very surprised with the way the horse was ridden that day. I thought the horse would have gone out from the gates, gone as quick as it could and catch me if you can and hang on for dear life at the end. Instead, they went with hold-up tactics, and that didn't work because they got hampered, unfortunately. But it ran a big race to finish third. I'm just not sure the horse is looking for 6 furlongs. The other one in here that's interesting as well is Shartash, the bottom horse here of Johnny Murtagh's. It's an Aga Khan-owned one. Shartash beat Age of Kings and Nose the first day in Naas, but that had the benefit of a previous run that day, whereas Age of Kings didn't. So this is quite a little trappy race now. You've only 6 runners, so there's not really each way betting, only 2 places rather than 3. I think it's quite tricky. I don't think Crispy Cat will definitely stay. I think myself, Shartash should get beaten by Age of Kings. So you're down to Blackbeard and Age of Kings, in my opinion. And at the respective prices, Age of Kings, it certainly looks a bit of value at the 5-1 currently.
I think the thing for me as well that stood out is looking at the trainer-jockey combo. So Aidan O'Brien as well, Ryan Moore. Must inform, I think it's fair to say. Ed, can you see anything other than a Blackbeard win here for that combo?
Yeah, I'm not blown away by Blackbeard, to be honest with you. I thought he looked incredibly slow in the Coventry. I mean, I know the race was run at a breakneck pace, but he came off the bridle a long way out and was doing all his best work in the closing stages that day to stay on into a well-beaten fourth over the 6 furlongs. To me, I mean, kind of mixed signals on his pedigree, but he looks like he wants a little bit of a trip, in my view. And his previous wins at the Curragh came with plenty of juice underfoot. And Vincent will touch upon the weather forecast in a minute. So, I don't know. I think he wanted everything just to slow up a little bit for him, you know, in terms of what I've seen so far. I don't think he's gettable here. He's going to be quite a short price, and I think he's a horse who I'd be happier over 7, and I could see Blackbeard going up to a mile at some point. So all in all, I'm going to try and fence it, but I would not be. I'd be looking to take on Blackbeard, who with I'm not totally convinced, but that'd probably be the way I'd sum this race up.
Lovely stuff. All right, let's move on to the big race of the day at the Curragh, of course, the Irish Derby. We've touched on it already. Vincent, take us through the card. I mean, how much influence does Tuesday have on the race? I mean, it makes it so much more compelling, surely.
Yeah, without a doubt, it's fantastic that she's been supplemented after winning the Epsom Oaks. Without her, this would be quite a trappy race in the sense that it would be a very low-class race overall, I would have thought. What's very unusual here is Aidan O'Brien has obviously supplemented the mare to come into this, or the filly. But the issue is he runs no colt, which is probably the first time in his history in Ballydoyle that he hasn't had a colt in an Irish Derby, considering the record he has in the race. So that's very unusual in itself. The great thing here is we've got 8 runners. That's the first thing, so you can back each way on some of those higher priced horses, which is terrific. 7 runners or less would have been a disaster for everyone organising this race. Like, there's €1 million in prize money. It's a classic race for 3-year-olds, Group 1 status, everything else. So it would have been a disaster to have less than that in it, considering the status of the race over the years and everything else. So Tuesday definitely helps here. We've got an Epsom Oaks winner. We've also got Westover, who was 3rd in the Derby. Very good run again. Was a 25-1 chance for the Derby, is vying for favouritism with Tuesday in this. So it looks a dead match on form, realistically. You're looking between the two, in my book anyway. And Tuesday was very good. Probably didn't get all the recognition she deserved for beating the Gosden horse at Epsom. I think Tuesday will probably win, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Westover win. But I think it's between the two. Outside of that, there's a few disappointing horses in here. This Pix Badil was thought to be very good, disappointed in the Derby. Some would say that the track didn't suit. I'm not quite so sure. I don't really know. It was beaten so far, it's hard to say. Glory Days of Andrew Oliver's as well was a massive outsider in Epsom and ran poorly. So very hard to see either of them. Hannibal Barca won the Gallinule in the Curragh the last day over a mile and a quarter, and had Boundless Ocean back in third that day. Hard to really see Boundless Ocean reverse the form, but I do know that Kevin Manning is sweet on its chances each way. But then again, I suppose when you're riding in a derby, you're expecting you have to have some optimism that you're going to be involved somewhere. So for me, Lionel might be one. Won well the last day, the Lope de Vega colt, coming over from England with Jamie Spencer on it. But for me, it's between the front two. The other thing to note here, as Ed was saying, was about the ground. The current going in the Curragh, this is recorded on Friday afternoon, and the current going is good to firm in places. But we're due some rain on Saturday and Sunday. Not a huge amount now. They're forecasting between 5 and 10 millimetres. 5 millimetres, just keep the dust down. We'll be looking at probably still good to firm in places. If they get the full 10, I'd say we're going to edge into the yielding side, but I don't think we should get much more than that. There certainly isn't a whole lot more rain forecast. It just might be a bit miserable on Saturday if you happen to be at the Curragh, because it's due to rain for most of the day.
I know Johnny Ward was actually big on the chances of Boundless Ocean as well. But Ed, you've got a long shot in here as well. Well, your tip for the weekend was get to that.
Yeah, I just thought Lionel is perhaps the dark horse in here, as Vincent was saying here. Jamie Spencer coming over to ride for David Minoussier, the Frenchman, trains down in Sussex, and the rain would be handy. If the rains could come a bit early and start to get into the ground, I think this would suit this Lope de Vega individual, who's got lots of form on soft. Obviously won the listed contest at Goodwood last time out on soft ground, and just looks a proper galloper. We saw that when runner-up on debut at Newbury. And I think it was interesting, they decided to swerve Epsom, where they thought the track wouldn't really suit on quick ground, to the Curragh. And David Minoussier said he's just thought the Curragh, and if the rain clouds decided to arrive, then it would be everything of the pieces of the jigsaw falling into place. Well, I think that Curragh as a race course will definitely suit this horse more than it would Epsom. And again, a couple of those others at the top, I totally respect Tuesday and Westover, but they had hard battles at Epsom 3 weeks ago, whereas Lionel obviously swerved that clash and is coming here a fresh horse. And if the rains did arrive, and by Saturday afternoon, that it was starting to get into the ground, that would only enhance this horse's claims. Eight runners, Jamie Spencer on board, coming here a fresh horse, totally unexposed. He looks a proper stayer. I thought he was the kind of each way value against the top two. I wasn't really convinced by some of those others at bigger prices. So yeah, Lionel for me, the each way play, but of the top two, I'd be with Tuesday.
Lovely stuff. All right, then, chaps, let's move on over to the international stakes. So the 420, where Vincent, I know your value angle is running in this race. Of course, you've got the favourite Max Swinney, but you're going against him.
Yes, at the time of putting in those tips, which was earlier this morning, it was a case where Rumbles of Thunder is the one I fancy and was a 7-2 chance, but the market is beginning to shift here already. People are heading in that direction with Rumbles of Thunder. But what you have here is Max Swinney has a very high level of form. It's an Irish 2,000 guineas winner, beat the stablemate Poetic Flare a short head last year, was fourth in the Epsom Derby, third in the Champion Stakes. Really high class form, but it's had one run this season and it was a very poor run. Finished beaten a long way here at the Curragh the last day. Now that was a very good race. He had State Arrest, finished third in that race and went on to win at Royal Ascot. So very high level of form, but Max Swinney was beaten a long way. The other thing is it has to reverse form with Bear Story, who finished a place ahead of it the last day. And what you're looking at here is Bear Story is £3 worse off. There was only a couple of lengths, but I think it was a length and a quarter between them. So there's a good chance here that Max Swinney will possibly improve for the run and beat Bear Story, but will it improve enough to win the race? That's the question. There's quite a few of these aren't really in their best form at the moment, but one that is Rumbles of Thunder. The Toomey horse, his horses have been flying all season, and this came from France. Won a listed race the last day and won very well. The horse that finished second that day was beaten 3 lengths, Sensei, and that ran a really good race in Nace the other night, where it flew home in a similar type contest. So I'd expect this Rumble of Thunder to really improve from the run the last day. It was only its second run for Paddy Toomey, and this is a definite contender. I think it will go off favourite. That's the most likely thing here. Unfortunately, you can't go each way. Really, again, we're dealing with 7 runners rather than 8, which is a bit of a pity. But it's still a good contest. The question is, do you think Max Swinney will come back to its best form? I personally don't. I think it's too much of an ask after how poor a reappearance run he had.
All right, well, best of luck for you with your value pick there. Now we're going to move on over to Newmarket and the 240. Now, Ed, I know you've got a value angle in this one as well, looking at the horses. Now, looking at the prices, there is a lot of live chances in this, only 5 declared, but 4 of them, realistically, in with a very good chance. So what impresses you about Kamari?
Yeah, interesting this one, Joe. I mean, I presume, obviously, Will Buick's had the choice of who he rides, and Rebels Romance on official figures is the best in the lineup. So maybe by default, William Buick's gone down that route. But I think Kamari's got some very good form. James Doyle's riding out of his skin. This horse, of course, won at Royal Ascot last year. It's been kind of hitting the crossbar in races since. I just wonder if it's the drop in trip angle for me here, Joe. I think when a horse wins over mile 6 at Ascot, straight, everyone's thinking, all right, this horse has got to go to extreme staying trips. But what we saw at York last time out and at Meydan on his penultimate start when he finished 5th when sent off favourite, just not quite seeing out those trips, I don't think. And he's clearly not devoid of pace. You know, he's won over 1.5 miles on a couple of occasions, and he's run one over 10 furlongs as well. So I just thought, interestingly, at the prices, Kamari's nearly double the price of Rebels Romance. And I just thought, I don't think there's as much between them as the market suggests, shall we say. Official ratings suggest there's not much between them. And it's not like Rebels Romance is arriving here on the back of some scintillating performances. Rebels Romance is very disappointing when last seen in Meydan. So, yeah, I just thought Kamari was the value pick, down in distance. I thought it was definitely one of interest.
Exactly. So as I'm just highlighting here for you, you can see the previous runs of Rebels Romance when you just hover over the name on Irish Racing. So yeah, Kamari, Ed's value pick. But let's move on to the next race. We're looking at the 315 at Newmarket. Now here, I wanted to go over the favourites, Lancash and Sunray Major. It's a bit hard to kind of pick between those two by the looks of things, but I wanted to highlight the fact that you can click here on the filtering on Irish Racing, and you can see that Lancash hasn't won for a long time. So Vincent, I want to bring you in here and just get your thoughts on, is that a little bit off-putting if you were looking to back either Lancash or Sunray Major? Would you be looking at the recent form and how long it's taken for Lancash to actually get a win on the board?
Well, I'd certainly go with the recent form, because there's some amount of recent form here. You've got 3 of them were separated by nothing the last day, less than half a length between Pogo, Lancash and Sunray Major. Obviously, the big talking point of this race is Sunray Major and the fact that Frankie Dettori doesn't ride. James Doyle rides this, so Frankie doesn't ride anything for Goslin over the weekend at Newmarket, which is a bit of a shock. Not a total shock, I suppose, after the bit of a spat they had in Ascot over some of the rides that he gave horses, particularly Stradivarius, I suppose. But at the same time, that's going to be a big talking point over the weekend, is all about this and the fallout from that and what it means. But ultimately, there's nothing between the 3 of these from that. Now, Pogo has a £3 penalty, is the only issue. He beat Lancash the last day by a nose. So Lancash is £3 better off, should surely reverse with that. Sunray Major, again, is £3 better off, was only beaten about half a length. The other thing for Sunray Major here is you can see it's got a first-time cheek pieces on, which again is interesting. That might just draw out a little extra bit here. This is a very trappy race. I would have thought that you could throw a blanket over these. This could be any one of them could win realistically of those 3. There's no way you can choose between which one. Pogo £3 worse off at 11-2 might be a little bit of value, but for me, I'd be staying out of this. I think it's too difficult.
Fair enough. I think that's a pretty good assessment and a pretty decent piece of advice. I mean, if you've not got a strong view on a race, then basically don't bet on it. All right, the next race we're going to look at is over at Newcastle and the Northumberland Plate. Now, there's 20 horses declared for this, so I don't want to go too depth runner by runner, but we do want to look at Trushan. Ed, I want to get your view on this as well. Of course, swerved Royal Ascot because of the ground. Will the ground now suit here at Newcastle, and is it a live chance?
Well, it has to be a live chance, doesn't he, as a Group 1 winner? I mean, it adds a fascinating dimension to this contest, doesn't it? Because it just totally skews all the weights, really, for a handicap to have a 120 rated Group 1 winner in the field. But then we saw this last year. Everyone took the class angle with Trushan. Horse was down the field, beaten off 118 on that occasion. £2 higher this time round. I think it was 6th last year, Trushan finished. So it's a hard one to call. Clearly the best horse in the field, has to give away lumps of weight to rivals. And it is interesting they go this route again. I suppose what you've got to ask yourself if you're backing Trushan is, do you think the horse is better 12 months later? There's probably evidence to suggest maybe he is, that he could be up to winning this off a mark of 120. But personally, I think it may just be too much to ask. He'll run really well. Just bumping in by purely the weights and measures, he'll just run into something that's just treated better than him. I just thought Valley Vorge was really interesting. This all stepped up in trips 2 miles last time at Haydock. Needed every yard of that to get up on the line and win. David Probat actually drops his reins in the closing stages as well. So the horse may just kind of saved a few pounds, if you like. And I think there's more to come over extreme distances from Valley Vorge. So, yeah, not a race I've got a particularly strong view on. But if forced, I'd be with Valley Vorge over Trushan, shall we say, at similar prices. But it's a wide open encounter.
Now, Vincent, I know you've got a strong view on this race. So actually take us through your nap and why you're going for the favourite in the race.
Yeah, well, the first thing to note here is Trushan. As Ed says, ran in the race last year off a slightly lower mark. But the thing for me is they claimed off Trushan last year, claimed £5. Reese Clutterbuck rode it. You've got Holly Doyle on this time. I'm not quite sure why they haven't claimed. The horse has got 10 stone 8. It's a welter burden over this sort of trip. Talking 2 mile race here, 2 miles and 56 yards. Those last 56 yards, Trushan's going to be feeling it with 10 stone 8. There's no doubt about that. The horse was back from 9 to 2 to 5 to 2 last year and could only finish 6th. This time round, they don't claim, and you've got, for me, the favourite, which deserves to be favourite, is Roginski. Roginski finished ahead of Trushan in the race last year, finished 4th but got promoted to 3rd, and has run really well this year in a couple of starts, 2 really good runs. Last year it was getting £20 off Trushan, this time gets 24. I think no reason why of £4 better will get beaten by Trushan this time when it didn't last year. So I think Roginski is a very good bet, solid bet at the top of the market. Has to be there or thereabouts, taken into account not only its form in the race last year, but its 2 runs already this year. And then the other one here that's interesting at a big price is Island Brave. Island Brave finished 3rd last year, got demoted to 4th to finish behind Roginski for some interference laid on. But that horse is really well in here. You've got a rider claiming off it as well. So when all things are taken into account, I think it was getting £16 last year off. Trushan gets £27 this year. Out of form recently, but it ran a cracker in this race last year, and just that and the booking of a really good apprentice on it, which Roginski also has a really good apprentice riding. So for me, I thought the 2 of them are interesting. Roginski is the most likely winner, and Island Brave wouldn't be surprised to see it run well at a big price.
Lovely stuff. All right, let's move on over to Sunday, and now we're going to look at the 210 at the Curragh. So, Vincent, take us through this one. Statuette, the odds-on favourite. Is there any worthy challenges here, or is it basically just a given that Statuette should win?
Yeah, not quite. Now, Statuette was due to run, or was entered to run in Royal Ascot, but they swerved that. It's a half-sister to Tenebrism, also trained by Aidan. Easy winner on debut at Navan, but it's very hard to take into account what that level of form is. Obviously, the horse is thought to be very good in Ballydoyle, but you still would have thought if they thought they had an absolutely star filly, they would have run her in Royal Ascot. I would have thought, but then again, maybe not. They see an opportunity here. It's on home soil and everything else. Very hard to beat, but there's some in here that could well be involved. You've got Zarinsk of Ger Lynes's. This was a narrow Curragh maiden winner on debut, but the second that finished in that race has gone on to finish 7th in the Queen Mary at Royal Ascot. The 4th and 6th have won since. You tend to see those Curragh maidens are of a decent standard, so the form is showing up well there. You've got several others in here that there's very little between. Comra, it's Showtime Baby, and Matilda Picote. They all finished behind the Ascot winner Meditate at Naas last time, and there was nothing between the 3 of them, so it's very hard to pick any one of those 3. And then you have another one there is Papillo, which was well back to win a Curragh maiden, and the second has won since out of that as well, the Stack horse. So again, that's owned by Magner and Shanahan and Magner, so you can see it's all the same ownership as the Coolmore crowd. So I don't know what to make of it. I wouldn't be backing Statuette at such a short price, but at the same time, it'll probably win. I think there's some decent ones in opposition. Zarinsk is certainly one that'd be very interesting. If there was money for the Ger Lynes horse, they're not having the greatest season, Ger Lynes and Colin Keane. Colin Keane comes into this weekend only sitting in 2nd in the jockey's table, which is a reflection not only of his own form, but of the Gerline stable, which is his primary retainer. So obviously they're not in totally hot form, but Colin Keane is a star rider. He rides in the Derby as well, rides Westover in the Derby. So he'll be expecting to have a big weekend, and he'd like to think he's a contender here. If I saw money for the Gerlines horse, I'd be very interested at the relative odds between the two.
Lovely stuff. All right, the last feature race that we want to get to as well is the Pretty Polly Stakes at the Curragh, of course. Now, Vincent, take us through this one. You got La Petite Coco, the favourite, but take us through it. You've got an interesting outsider we were speaking about off air.
Yeah, this is a cracker. This is possibly the race of the weekend. Fabulous race with 9 really good fillies and mares in here. This really is a top class contest. Le Petit Coco is the chief Irish hope and likely favourite, I suppose. Paddy Toomey again. Big question mark about the fact the horse we haven't seen the horse for a while. She hasn't run since winning the Moyglare last September, but she looked really good at that stage in her career. They've also got Ross Carberry in here, which has been a revelation since joining Paddy Toomey's yard, unbeaten since it's gone there. Got a very strong English challenge. You've got Ed Walker's Dream Loper, which won in Longchamp the last day. You've got William Haggis has 2 in it. He's got My Astra, which was a 12-length winner on soft ground in Ayr the last day. Very unusual to see a horse winning 12 lengths at this sort of level. And you've got Purple Play, which was 6th in the Irish 2000 or Irish 1000 guineas, and since won in Shanty. So good horse too. You've got Concert Hall here, 4th to Tuesday at Epsom. Beat Magical Lagoon on the previous start, which, as we know, went on. The Harrington horse went on to win in Royal Ascot as well. But the one I like here at a big price is the lowest rated horse in the race. It's Lyrical Poetry, and it's currently 33 to 1. By the time you're listening to this, depending on when you listen to this over the weekend, the 2 horses that finished around this the last day in the Gallinule, you've got Hannibal Barca and Boundless Ocean. They both run in the Derby. And if one or both of them was to run very well in the Derby, or potentially win the Derby, which is not beyond the realms of possibility, all of a sudden Lyrical Poetry's form goes up a notch or 2, and you won't be seeing 33 to 1. What I do know is that I know Johnny Murt is very happy with the recent homework of this horse, that he thinks she's working very well and is expecting a big run. That being the case, Murt is well able to train winners, as we know. He targets most of them for these big meetings. So if this filly's in top form, her run the last day potentially is a very good run, that she splits those 2, Hannibal Barca and Boundless Ocean. So if one of them runs very well in the Derby, I'd be expecting Lyrical Poetry to tumble in price here and be a contender each way at the least.
Happy days. Well, hopefully some big value there on offer for the Jump To It viewers. Now, I think we're going to get to our tips of the week. We've kind of touched on a lot of them already, but Ed, I'll kick you off with your tips, please. Your nap, your value angle, and your long shot for the weekend.
Yeah, indeed, Joe. Yeah, some great stuff. That Pretty Polly does look amazing, actually. I'll probably get involved in that nearer the time. But yeah, I thought Glen Shiel in the Chip Chase Stakes was just massively overpriced. I think he's the best horse in the field, and also has some stunning form at the venue. I think 3 wins and 2 placed efforts from 5 starts. So Holly Doyle on board, return to the synthetic surface, I thought was just way overpriced personally. Kamari, we've touched upon earlier on in the show. I'm taking the drop down in trip angle with that horse. I know Kamari has won over a mile 6 and has been campaigned over staying distances, but has winning form over middle distances, and I just think that drop in trip will suit with James Doyle on board. And then, yeah, the long shot, thought Leonor for a bit of an upset. David Minutier, he's stringing very good form. Jamie Spencer coming over to ride, and this horse won nicely at Goodwood last time out. Bulk of his best form with Give Underfoot. So I'm just hoping, it's nice and miserable, and the rain's lashing down on Vincent's windows outside. I like to see a bit of rain arrive on the Saturday and just deaden up the ground, take the sting out of it. And I don't think he's a forlorn hope from an each-way perspective in that one. So really good stuff. Yeah, that Pretty Polly is the race of the weekend now. I mean, it's just the more and more I look at it, the more and more I keep coming up with a different winner each time. But my old friend Concert Hall, I don't think is out of it at all. As Vincent says, beat Magical Lagoon. That's one at Royal Ascot, and was right on the heels of Nashwa, who's since gone and won a Group 1 in France as well. So the Oaks form's working out a treat. So, brilliant weekend of racing. Really looking forward to it.
Happy days. Well, thanks a lot, Ed, for passing on your tips. Best of luck, and we'll see you again next week. Vincent, over to you just to wrap up your top tips for the weekend.
Yeah, well, they've all been mentioned already. My nap is Rajinsky in the Northumberland Plate. Like, it's on the all-weather, this race. This horse has race form, finished third in it last year, or was promoted to third last year. Hasn't been in scintillating form already this season. I'd be very surprised if it's not involved. Be disappointed if it doesn't win, to be honest with you. I think it's worth having a bet in this race, because I think Trushan has taken up too much of the market, and I don't fancy Trushan. I think they should have claimed at the very least, and I'm also surprised the horse runs, to be honest with you. It's a welter bird and a 10 stone 8. The other one then is Rumbles of Thunder. I think this is value. I don't think it'll be 7-2 on the day. The reason I think it's value is because I don't fancy the likely original favourite, McSwinney. I think that, again, is taking up too much of the market, so you're getting value at Rumbles of Thunder. It's a Paddy Toomey horse, and they're in scintillating form all season, so I'd be disappointed if that doesn't run its race. And if she runs her race, she has to be there or thereabouts. And then my long shot is Lyrical Poetry. This is a bit of a stab in the dark to some extent, because of the fact that it's a 33-25 to 1 chance. You're getting big value. It's the lowest rated horse in the race, but she does have a squeak here, and particularly depending on how the other two that have form with her run in the Derby on Saturday. If they run well in the Derby on Saturday, you'll be very happy if you're sitting on a ticket with 33 to 1 written on it come Sunday afternoon.
Lovely stuff. All right, that wraps it up for today's edition of Jump to It. Thanks a lot for joining us, and be sure to tune in next week as well for more tips and advice from the Irish Racing team. Thanks a lot to Vincent Finegan and Ed Quigley, of course. Now, if you do place a bet, please gamble responsibly, and we'll see you again very soon.